So welcome to the RecWired podcast with a special guest today from our partner WorkWell, Hannah Mollison, who's recently taken over as the sales director for the outsourcing division. So welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thanks, Andy. I'm very excited to be here today.
Good. So Hannah, you're not new to the staffing world, but it wasn't where you started. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so I have worked in a few different industries. My career started when I graduated from uni, and my first job was working for a company that provides indemnity to doctors. It was actually a really good job straight out of university because the medical students were my age because they had a 5-year degree and I graduated after a 3-year degree. And I would go around all of the different medical schools and hospitals trying to get the junior doctors and the medical students to utilize our services. And essentially, if we got them to sign up, they would pretty much stay with us for the whole of their career. It's very rare that they would ever change to one of our competitors. So once they were locked in, they were in. So yeah, I did that for about 4 years, and then I moved into the payroll industry. So I worked for probably...
So just before we talk about the payroll industry, right? Sales is all about creating a fear of loss or a creation of opportunity. So yes, you'd have to literally go around to these people and say, medical students, it's an expensive, it's a long-term degree. So I'd imagine you have to kind of create this sort of fear of loss that if you do something wrong, you're going to get sued and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so we would actually do different seminars as well. So there was an education piece to it. It wasn't just rocking up at the Students' Union and with a stand and stuff. And everyone loved the different examples of things that had happened to doctors. So in fact, there was one that was medical student related, and a medical student had been on a night out and something had happened with someone, I think something to do with their throat. And there's basically a procedure you can do, and this is not medical advice or anything like that from me, but some kind of tube would go into your throat and it opens up their airway. So a medical student tried to do this with a pen after drinking all day. And it was obviously very detrimental to the patient in question. And that guy obviously didn't finish his medical course or anything like that. But yeah, so it does kind of install using the examples did install fear into them, but it was actually really important for them to have. And actually, if you're working in an NHS hospital, you have to have indemnity with a company in the UK. So yeah, I could give you various different examples because everyone loves the kind of case studies and things like that, don't they?
Yeah, so obviously a tracheotomy with a pen is probably not to be advised on the podcast.
I'm glad you know what it's called, yeah.
So after you've done that, so you've been around universities, I'd imagine as well, it's quite a nice graduate job as well, because, very similarly, people out drinking, they party hard. And then you went into the umbrella world, which, was that a bit of a seamless transition?
Yes and no. I mean, it was a huge learning curve because all I had known was kind of the medical industry. And I had a very good understanding of a doctor's career and how they progress and all the different specialties and things like that. So it was a huge learning curve in terms of the recruitment industry. And also it's a very different type of person that you are selling to and you're getting to know, and a very different kind of need, I guess, in terms of what they need from us. So it in terms of the day-to-day job, like, yes, it was very similar because I was on my own, bumbling around the country, going to various different meetings, trying to get in front of as many agencies as possible, building relationships. But there was a lot for me to learn. And also, I didn't know the umbrella world at all. When the recruiter that placed me at that particular company I was working at told me that he had a job in an umbrella company, I assumed it was a factory or something making umbrellas. Yeah, so...
Umbrella gets a bad press these days. Have you seen much change in the industry since you've been in it?
Yes, a lot. So I came into the industry just as the tax allowance on travel and subsistence had ended. So I kind of came in probably at the worst time because it was very difficult to sell umbrella from that point onwards. And that really was probably the key benefit back then. And it was an easy sell. You'd go in, your contractor's going to take home more money. Great. Why wouldn't they do it? Nowadays, it's a lot more, it is a harder sell, and there are benefits to doing it. But with regards to it getting a bad name, I mean, there's quite a lot of dodgy umbrella companies around, and they give the industry a bad name. So the ones that are good and the ones that are compliant and have contractors' best interests at heart get a bad name as a knock-on effect, but it doesn't mean to say that they are all in that boat.
So when you're doing umbrella sales, how do you differentiate yourself? Because if everyone's, playing on the same level playing field, the take home should be the same. And there are some unscrupulous companies out there that will promise you 85% and take all your tax money and go and spend it in the Bahamas. But assuming you're up against, the good ones, the FCSA ones, et cetera, how do you differentiate yourself?
So I think there's three elements, if I'm honest. So first of all, integrity. If you're going into an agency, they are recommending you as a partner and it's a reflection on them. So you need to do what you say you're going to do because they're putting trust in you. So integrity. The other thing which kind of ties into integrity is service, because so many umbrella companies do not have good service. So if you can set yourself apart with the service, and that does fall down onto the person managing that account, making sure that they are on top of everything. And thirdly, it comes down to their account manager, the person that's looking after them, because they buy into you. I do think it's a long game being in the umbrella industry. The longer you're in it, the more the agencies and the consultants and managers are going to trust you and know that you're good for your word and you'll do what you say you're going to do, and that they can rely on you and you're not going anywhere, because there is also staff turnover in the umbrella industry. It is hard to get people that will stay. Like when I was at my original umbrella company, I think for 4 years, and the longer I was there, kind of the easier it got in a way. So
yeah, everyone else just moving on, leaving, and you get the good accounts.
yeah.
So you've joined WorkWell Outsourcing,
Yeah.
which does a number of things, in terms of back office, in terms of funding, in terms of software, et cetera. So I'd be really interested. You're obviously a month or two in now. So what's the biggest difference you found from being in that umbrella world and limited company world to going into the outsourcing world?
Yeah. So I think outsourcing is a much more complex and well-rounded service. And there's lots of different elements to our outsourcing side of the business. Umbrella is pretty much purely payroll, and umbrella payroll, the umbrella company would act as the contractor's employer. Whereas on the outsourcing side of the business, if let's say it's the pay and bill part of the business, we don't act as the employer. We literally just run the payroll, and there's various different ways that we can do that. So I think sometimes with outsourcing, there is a big misconception. We are not directors, we are not signatories, not secretaries. We kind of have no control over bank accounts unless we get access and get permissions and things like that. So I think that's probably the key difference. It's much more, I would say, complex and consultative service on the outsourcing side, and there's so many different layers to the service. Whereas umbrella, I would say, it is predominantly, well, it is just pretty much payroll. I mean, there is the compliance side of it, in terms of keeping agencies up to date with any changes in legislation and things like that. So yeah.
Is it difficult to convince people to outsource, because you're putting a lot of trust in another organization to represent your brand, and also to make sure you get it right, I guess?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of twofold, because it depends on the agency and it depends where they're at on their journey. So it could be a startup and they have absolutely no understanding of accounts, credit control, even forming a company, which is all stuff that we can take on, and we do take on. So from that perspective, they kind of have to have trust in you from the word go, but at the same time they don't know how to do that, and it's going to take them a long time, and also it's a time-consuming task to do all of the different administration tasks involved in setting up a business and then running the back office of it. And what we do find is that a lot of the startups we work with, they're consultants that have had great success and they're really driven and they want to go out on their own and pave their own way in the industry. So they're very good at selling and recruiting, but in terms of the other side of it and the back office and the operational side of it, they don't necessarily have the knowledge. So yeah, so that's kind of one element of it, of them putting trust in us from the word go. And obviously, if you make a good impression and the service is there, then they're going to trust you as they grow. And you know, it's a great partnership to have. If an agency is more established, it again, it depends on the agency and the size of them and what they're trying to accomplish as an agency. So, you know, ultimately, these recruitment agencies are people's babies. They've nurtured them, they've grown them. So to relinquish the back office or the operational element of that business is tough. So what we try to do is have a consultative selling process. So not all of our services are going to be right for an agency, and they're not going to be interested in all of our services, but we need to have that conversation to understand, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? What are you struggling with? It might just be as simple as they just need someone to do their pay and bill. They need a service for their pay and bill, but it might be that they want to take their agency to the next level. And to do that, it's going to either cost them money in terms of getting more overheads in terms of bigger offices, equipment. They'll need more staff. All of that stuff is really expensive, and also it's time consuming, going to have to look at offices, buying more equipment, interviewing staff, and it is hard to get good staff. So it's kind of having to make the decision of what they want to keep hold of and what they want to relinquish. And yeah, you do have to get their trust, but as long as you have good faith in the service that you're providing, then I don't really see it being a problem. I wouldn't want to bring someone on board if they're not comfortable with the conversations that we've had and the services that we've discussed. So
yeah, I think one of the things that, you know, we as a group work with people in exactly those two categories. They're either the people that are starting up, or they're the people who are established and looking to grow. So we've got two very distinct groups that require the dinghy and the bridge that cater for that. And what you see in the dinghy is exactly that. You know, people come on board and, you know, typically they've never run their own business before, so they don't know what a shareholders agreement is. They don't know what effectively that they need an accountant. They don't know that, do they need to be VAT registered, etc.,
yes.
etc. Do they need to do a return? You know, how do I pay myself? All of those things can be very time consuming and can be very expensive if you get them wrong. Yeah, and I having good advice at the start of the business is very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, as you grow, you're absolutely right. It's that point of, you know, typically all of the people 95% of the people I know that start up are great recruiters, they're great salespeople, and they're just untested in business and they just don't know it. And I think having an organization that you can sort of at least, you know, trust to do the things you didn't even know you needed to do.
Yeah. So with the kind of startups, you don't know what you don't know. So these people that are setting up on their own, they might not know about management accounts, saving for their tax bill at the end of the year. But what we do with any of our agencies, if they're utilizing our back office and our accountancy and our credit control, we will have their management accountant go through their books with a fine-tooth comb after their first 3 months and on an ongoing basis, to ensure that they completely kind of understand where they're at in terms of revenue, because they might think, oh, we're doing fantastic, but actually when you balance out the books, it might not be quite the figure that they think. So we do try and ensure that we give people as much information as possible, and they're well informed when they're utilizing our services.
So probably not everyone's heard of WorkWell as an outsourcing firm, but they'd probably be very familiar with T-Boss, for example. So, and T-Boss were a business that you acquired.
Yeah.
And I guess that was, you know, a business that people have been super familiar with, and, you know, in terms of the sort of service they're offering in terms of that back office piece. But you also do funding as well, which again is super important for businesses to run their cash flow, manage their cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So so we have funding, we have pay and bill, we have pay and bills as SaaS. But yeah, in terms of the funding, again, this appeals to startups, but it actually does really appeal to more established businesses as well. I am actually speaking to an established business at the moment regarding funding, because they they're waiting, I think it's something like 45 days to get their funds from their end clients. So, you know, people are waiting a long time to get paid. So with regards to our funding, we can fund in 17 different countries. So if an agency did want to set up overseas, we can help funding with that. But in terms of the funding,
that's really great coverage. So people can effectively, you know, it's not just the UK business that they support. If they've got European business, you can support that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. The US is also a really popular place that we are getting potential clients asking for funding in. But in terms of the 100% funding, or what we call it as 100% funding, so how it works is, let's say an agency has started placing workers, and they are not going to be receiving their margin from their end client or fees to pay the workers for, let's say, 30 days, for example. What we will do is we will take on that debt. We will pay the workers on a weekly basis. So the workers are going to be getting paid from the outset, and the agency doesn't need to worry. And we will also pay the agency their margin on a weekly basis. So it means that the agency will still have money to pay for any kind of operational costs that they might have, rent, equipment, whatever it might be. It means that they're getting money straight away to carry on practicing.
What it strikes me as the difference in your role now versus the previous roles is that, you know, you've gone from selling a product to selling a solution. It sounds like every time you go into an agency, it's going to be slightly different.
Oh, absolutely. No one agency is the same. They're all different. And that's why, like I said previously, we like to have a consultative sales process. We need to understand them as an agency. And the other thing to consider as well is that agencies that recruit within different industries, I do think agencies have their own personalities.
Well, explain.
Yeah. So I think there's specific type of personality for, say, construction agencies, healthcare agencies, education, engineering, whatever it might be. I do feel like there's kind of a personality. So, for example, when I was working at the first umbrella company I worked at, I had great success in like the big corporate agencies. That's where I had my success. But that's because I'd come from the indemnity, and I'd also done software sales as well. That was all very corporate. So they kind of matched my experience. But my colleagues, some of them really suited the construction agencies. So I do think every agency kind of has their own personality to a certain extent.
Okay. I guess the question that everyone wants to know is, what's happening in the market? How have you found it this year?
I think this year, in terms of agencies, or
in terms of, you know, the recruitment market, how agencies are doing, what's working for people?
Yeah, I think it's kind of been a bit of a difficult year, cost of living, things like that. One thing that I hear over and over again is that agencies are finding it hard to find good staff, and also keep hold of good staff. Like turnover seems to be a big problem. I think a lot of agencies are wanting to streamline a lot of things, and they're wanting a lot of integrations, whether that be from their systems or whether that be in terms of their teams. So yeah, I think it's a constantly evolving industry, isn't it?
I think it's just, I think we've had a really good year and then a really bad year, and it just feels like a normal recruitment year for anyone that's been in it. You know, good companies that are doing the right things well will make money, and you know, the companies who don't, you know, will struggle, which is pretty much, you know, recruitment.
Yeah.
So going forward, what's your plan? You know, what are the bigger plans for what you guys are going to do?
So I think for me personally, I think we need to get the WorkWell Outsourcing brand out there a lot more. I feel like agencies are very familiar with WorkWell, but just see it as an umbrella company. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on the marketing side of things. That's something that I'm working heavily on. We've got a great suite of products, but I just don't think there's the market is that aware of it as it stands at the moment. So that's from my perspective. Obviously, I want to try and grow the team, grow the outsourcing suite of products, as it were. We are looking to partner with various different service providers, whether that be CRMs, marketing companies. essentially want to make sure we have everything that a recruitment agency would need, that other than actually recruitment or recruiting, so that it's kind of a one-stop shop. And don't get me wrong, we're not trying to be experts in marketing and, you know, social media and everything like that as well, but if we can have partners that we can recommend, again, it's that consultative approach, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just there's. I think people are more and more comfortable with outsourcing parts of their business, and you know, over the last few years, I think recruiters have worked out where their value is, and that their value is in maintaining relationships. Their value is in putting people together. Their value is in, you know, just building their networks. Whereas actually, there's a lot of stuff that you can put off to people who do it all day, every day, and better. So yeah, I think but I think you're right. It's a, you know, when you can do everything, it's about just making sure that people are aware of what you can do and just getting those services absolutely down pat. So anyway, we'll have a chat with you in a few months, see how you've got on.
Right.
Sounds an exciting role, and I know, you know, relatively new into it, but certainly wish you all the very best, and we'll have you on the podcast in a few months' time. Hannah, if people want to find out about outsourcing and hear a bit more, or, you know, perhaps have a coffee or a chat, or just a, you know, an idea of what it could look like at their organization, how can they contact you?
They can contact me on LinkedIn, Hannah Mollison, Mollison is the surname. Alternatively, my email address is hmollison at workwelloutsourcing.com. And my mobile number is on my LinkedIn profile. So if anyone wants to reach out by phone, absolutely, please just pick up the phone in the first instance, wherever possible.
And what we'll do is at the end, we'll put those details below this, and you know, our required members can contact you. The other thing, you're going to be hosting content for us, I know, on RecWired Plus, which is great. And yeah, looking forward to, you know, having all those guides on how to navigate business going forward. But thanks so much for your time, Hannah. It's been
Thanks for having me, Andy. It's been great fun.
Catch up soon.
Cheers, bye.